Hello and welcome to SNR Tech Bytes. Today I want to talk about the Mac Rack. It's a mostly 3D printed rack mount for your Apple Mac Mini. Well, it's been quite a while since I put out my last video, so I apologize to all of you who've been looking for something from SNR Tech Bytes for the last while. Unfortunately, things got pretty busy. I am very excited to say that I finished my graduate degree. That was a lot of work and one of the things that really took away time from SNR Tech Bytes. So I'm really hoping to get back into it with a lot of really fun projects. One of the really fun projects I've worked on lately that I'm really hoping to share with you all soon when I kind of finalize the last couple of things is I built this really cool Halo Spartan suit. I've been showing up at different cons in the Southwest United States, showing it off, and it's been a lot of fun kind of getting into cosplay. I am still working on the Iron Man suit, of course. However, it's proven to be quite difficult to make a full suit of armor. So I wanted to do some learning with the Halo suit and figure out how to build armors. And now that I've kind of figured it out, I'm hoping to get back to Iron Man very soon and share that with you all. Anyway, let's talk about the Mac Rack. Obviously, it's designed for a Mac Mini. This is a 2019 Mac Mini. Unfortunately, I don't have other Macs to test it with, but based on CAD models, it does appear that this will work for any Mac from 2015 to the 2021, 2022 Apple Silicon Macs. This will not work with the Mac Studio, the really tall one. I am working on another design. If that's interesting to you, please leave a comment. Some other features of the Mac Rack is it is a standard 19-inch rack that will fit in any standard 19-inch rack. It is switch depth, so if you have a short rack, it'll actually fit inside of your switch depth rack as well. It does use an anodized aluminum front plate as the major structural support for the system. The entire rack itself is 3D printed on the back end. It has a 3D printed insert so you can mount keystones here. This is perfect if you want front-facing Ethernet or front-facing USBs. I've got a couple different links to different types of keystone mounts that I like down in the description below. It has a vent hole since the Mac Minis vent from the bottom. So that allows a lot of airflow to come through the bottom of the Mac Mini. And the open design everywhere else allows this thing to have a lot of air. I've never had any temperature problems with this running in my rack, and I've had it in my rack for about the last 6 months now, and it's been working flawlessly. One of the biggest challenges with this design was actually figuring out how to turn the computer on. So I designed this arm here that when you push, it pushes the button. And because the entire arm is stiff, you can actually feel the button get pressed when you push the button from the front, which is a really nice feature. There are some other ones that exist out there and they just don't feel quite as haptic. And finally, there is a small cutout on the front which allows you to see the power button of your Mac Mini, so it's really easy to tell from the front whether the power is on or off. Okay, let's talk about how to build it. If you ordered the Bring Your Own Printer kit, this is what's going to show up to you. You'll have your anodized aluminum front plate, you'll have one 5mm screw, you'll have 12 10mm screws, and you'll have 10 50mm screws. In order to assemble, you will need the rest of your printed parts, so I'll grab those now. You'll need all 3 of the actual components of the Mac Rack. You'll need your keystone plate, or you can use the blank plate if you don't plan on using any of the keystones on the front of your Mac Rack. You'll need the button pusher. This is the piece that's actually going to go right here to push the power button on the back of your Mac Mini. And finally, you'll need your actual pusher. Now, this is going to be printed in 2 parts. You'll have your thin rod here, and then you'll have the actual button itself. You just do a little super glue or something to glue those together. Now, the real trick to these and the reason that they work is because they're actually printed with grooves on both sides. So it creates a dovetail joint between the 2 pieces to make it a really strong fit. So the screws don't actually hold very much of the weight. Instead, the plastic itself is holding a lot of the weight of the Mac Rack. Some of that weight will get transferred into your front plate as well, but fortunately the Mac's a pretty light machine, so there's not a lot of weight we have to worry about. In order to assemble, we need to start by putting 4 50mm screws in the plastic parts of the Mac Rack. You're going to have one here, 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 and here. They're going to thread just like this inside of the Mac Rack, so go ahead and install those. You're welcome to use power tools if you like, but I suggest putting them on the absolute lowest torque setting you can. Otherwise, you can use any type of screwdriver you like. I like to start all 4 first, and then finish them afterwards. It helps keep everything held together to make assembly a little bit easier. And then screw them all the way in. It's important to note these do not need to be very tight at all. All we're trying to do is make sure that the dovetails are hooked together, and when we put the front plate on, we do have to have all of these screws align as well. So it's important to make sure that we don't squeeze these dovetail joints too tightly. The next step is going to be to grab our aluminum front plate. Note the alignment here. This small hole here is actually so that your Mac can get air in, since it vents from the bottom and out the back, and then this is the hole for the light on the front of your Mac, so you can quickly tell that it's on. The easiest way to do this is to get it generally aligned and then carefully thread a screw through and get it started, and then do the same thing on the opposite corner. Before I tighten these, I like to get the rest of the 50mm screws started. Now the reason I like to use 3 screws here is because it transfers the weight from the Mac rack to your rack, so it's really important that there's a lot of stiffness right here to make sure that that weight can successfully be transferred. Once those are started, screw them all the way in. Now the next part is going to be putting all the 10mm screws in the front plate here. Now these are mostly to prevent the whole system from sagging underneath and help carry that load through the aluminum frame instead. I typically like to start in the middle and then move my way out. If you're having a hard time getting these to line up, it's possible that you tightened the screws inside the plastic too tight. Unfortunately, the best way to fix that is to pop the whole thing off and loosen those screws just a tiny bit so they're not squishing the plastic so much. As long as your printer is well tuned, you shouldn't have this problem. Once you have all those screws in, the next thing to do is going to be installing the keystone plate. It's important to note the orientation on the keystone plate. If you look at the back side, there's going to be these small square grooves on the top side and then these kind of larger cutouts on the bottom. So take note of that orientation. Align the holes with the screws. Now the final piece of assembly is putting in the button presser. To start, we're going to take the button presser and the pointy end is going to face towards the Mac itself. This is the piece that will actually make contact with the back of your Mac. It goes on this post here, and then we're going to take our actual presser itself and we're going to feed it through the hole on the front, align it through all of the supports, align the 2 holes on the back, and then use that 1 5mm M3 screw to screw it together. Now this does not need to be tight at all, it just needs to go through both pieces. In fact, you want to keep it loose so there's quite a bit of play in the button. The button itself on the Mac will kind of keep the system with a little spring tension in it, so when you push on the front, it pushes the whole arm and turns your Mac on and off from the front. And with that, your Mac rack is assembled. I am selling the files on my website as well as some completed forms. You can buy the BYOP or Bring Your Own Printer version, which will come with the anodized aluminum front plate, all of the screws you need to assemble the system. You can buy a fully assembled version, which will come to you looking just like this, or you can buy the files, which does come with the DXF as well, and make your own completely from scratch. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, don't get lost in the noise.